Hi everyone, today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, Becky and Tim. B and Nak met while attending Quincy University. Becky pursued a degree in biology and played tennis, while Tim made a name for himself as an all-star football player. Those who knew Tim well described him as a fun, goofy guy who always greeted people with a hug. His infectious energy and warm personality made him a favorite among his peers. On the other hand, Becky's friends described her as a happy person who lit up a room just by her presence. Her positive energy and radiant smile made her instantly approachable. Because Becky and Tim were both attractive people, they seemed to complement each other perfectly. Their physical appearance and chemistry together made them look like the ideal couple. 2 years after graduating from Quincy University, Becky and Tim decided to embark on a new chapter in their lives by getting married as a practical couple. They prioritized saving money over extravagant expenses. Tim chose not to buy Becky an engagement ring and didn't plan a lavish honeymoon following their wedding. Instead, they decided to invest their savings in a down payment for their first home. Becky's dreams in life included pursuing a career as a doctor. However, she ultimately decided against following this career path while she had a genuine interest in medicine. Becky felt a strong calling towards motherhood. She yearned to experience the joy and fulfillment that came with being a mother. Her dream of becoming a mother came true, and she and her husband Tim had 3 sons. Being a mother was the ultimate joy for Becky, and she cherished nothing more than being a mother to her 3 boys. Becky loved spending quality time with them and watching them grow and thrive as the boys grew older. Becky chose to pursue her dreams and aspirations. She decided to go back to school and obtain a nursing degree. Tim Bianek had always been a performer from his days in the community theater in Quincy to his hilarious social media video. Tim had a knack for captivating audiences with his wit and charm. In 2008, he decided to take things further and tried out for American Gladiators. While he didn't make the cut to compete on the show, he did manage to reach the final round of auditions with an insatiable drive for attention. Tim found another opportunity to showcase his talent in September 2019. The producers of Family Feud reached out to him, inviting him and his family to participate in the popular game show. However, Becky's nursing school commitments prevented her from joining him on the show. Determined to make the most of the opportunity, Tim rallied his family, including his parents and brothers. The premise of Family Feud revolves around 2 teams of family members or friends competing against each other. By guessing the answers of a survey of 100 people provided, Steve Harvey, the host of the popular game show Family Feud, asked Tim Bianek what he thought. The most popular answer was to the question, "What was the biggest mistake you made at your wedding?" Tim, known for his witty humor, shocked Steve Harvey and the audience with his response. Tim replied, "Honey, I love you," but said, "I do." This statement caught everyone off guard and laughter filled the studio. Despite the unexpected nature of the response, it was ranked second on the scoreboard, earning points for Tim and his family. The BNCK family went on to participate in Family Feud for a 3-episode stint, ultimately winning a total of $20. So this amount was divided among the family members, with each member receiving an equal share. However, there was one notable exclusion. Tim did not share any of the winnings with his wife Becky. Despite Becky and Tim's years of marriage, their relationship had begun to strain when Becky decided to pursue a career as a nurse. Her husband Tim expressed strong opposition. Tim said his primary concern was Becky's well-being, as he worried about the stress associated with the nursing career. He believed that Becky had difficulties managing her patients and stress levels when it came to their children, and he wondered how this would affect her job performance. However, Becky's friends had a different perspective on Tim's opposition. They believed that Tim did not like Becky being independent and pursuing her interests out of his control over time. Becky's friends observed a decline in her happiness in her marriage. They observed that the initial 5 years of her marriage were relatively positive, but Tim's behavior became more manipulative and controlling. Becky's friends noted that despite Becky dedicating substantial time and effort to her nursing studies and work, Tim failed to shoulder his fair share of responsibilities within the home. Tim neglected to clean and didn't help care for their sons. He left everything for Becky to take care of after her long days standing on her feet as a nurse. Becky, recognizing there was a strain in their marriage, felt the need to address it with Tim. She believed that attending marriage counseling could help them find solutions, and restore harmony in their relationship. However, to her disappointment, Tim disagreed with attending counseling despite Becky's dedication to resolving the issues in their marriage. Tim had a different plan in January 2021. After 11 years of marriage, Tim filed for divorce from Becky. This decision surprised Becky, as she had shown determination and commitment in trying to save their marriage. However, Tim's decision was clear-cut, as he moved out of the family home and into a house across town. Tim said that the reason behind his decision was a change in Becky's personality. After becoming a nurse, he believed that her profession had taken a toll on her, resulting in a noticeable alteration in her demeanor. This change in Becky's personality, according to Tim, had a negative impact on their marriage. The divorce between Tim and Becky proved contentious. Tim and Becky were unable to find common ground and their communication deteriorated. Both parties fought over various issues, including child custody, property division, and alimony. At a certain point, Tim applied for an order of protection against Becky. In this request, Tim stated that Becky had been stalking and harassing him and referenced an incident where Becky became combative during a verbal fight at a parent-teacher night conference at their son's school. As evidence, Tim produced a video that he had recorded on his phone which depicted Becky pounding on the door of his car outside the school. However, Becky had a different perspective on the situation. She alleged that it was Tim who was engaging in the harassment. Becky shared her concerns with several of her friends through text messages. In these texts, she detailed various incidents where Tim had screamed in her face, shoved her in front of their sons, and even thrown things across the room. In a particularly distressing text to one friend, Becky expressed her belief that Tim had serious mental health problems and that he was becoming more vengeful and unpredictable after one of Becky's co-workers was murdered by her partner. Becky became increasingly fearful for her safety. She began to believe that Tim, her partner, was capable of committing a similar act against her. As a result, Becky texted her sister saying that if any harm were to befall her, Tim would be the #1 person of interest. Becky's concerns were fueled by the fact that she feared that Tim would resort to drastic measures to separate her from her children. The text message left Becky's sister deeply concerned for Becky's well-being. She knew that Becky's fears were valid and that she needed to seek assistance in an effort to protect Becky's life. Her sister implored her to visit a domestic violence resource center. Eventually, Becky decided to file an order of protection against Tim in her request west. Becky claimed that Tim had entered her home without permission and had falsified their interactions. As a judge reviewed Tim and Becky's orders of protection, he determined not to grant either one. The judge ordered Tim and Becky to stay away from each other's homes except when they exchanged custody of their children. However, in February 2023, Tim called the Quincy Police Department and informed them that he would not be returning the gun to B. According to Tim, he didn't want to give the gun to that crazy whackers. On February 22, 2023, Becky and Tim's 3 sons, aged 12, 10, and 5, were spending the night with Tim at his home 1 mile from where Becky was living. The divorce between Becky and Tim was set to be finalized in just 1 week. Tim reached out to Becky's father the following day, explaining that he had not been able to get in touch with Becky and that Becky had failed to pick the boys up from school as she was supposed to. Knowing how dedicated Becky was as a mother, her father knew that something must have happened to prevent her from fulfilling her parental responsibilities, prompted by his concern for Becky's well-being. Becky's father immediately drove to her house upon arriving. He made entry and walked around shouting Becky's name, hearing no response. He went up the stairs and entered Becky's bedroom. Inside the room, he noticed something disturbing. Becky was lying face up in a pool of blood covered in gunshot wounds. Detectives and crime scene investigators arrived at Becky's house after her father discovered her bloody and lifeless body face up in the bathroom. Upon their arrival, the investigators began their investigation by carefully examining the outside of Becky's home. After a thorough search, they identified that the suspected perpetrator gained entry by prying open an upstairs window in one of the children's bedrooms. This discovery led them to believe that the suspect utilized a patio chair to facilitate their entry into the house and climb up to the roof. Investigators followed the path they believed the suspect had taken. They walked towards Becky's bedroom, where the door appeared violently kicked down or broken. The broken state of the bedroom door indicated to the investigators that The suspect had forcibly entered the room, most likely searching for Becky. Evidence suggested that Becky had attempted to barricade herself in the bathroom, but the suspect had followed her and caught up to her. However, the suspect followed her and caught up to her, ultimately shooting her inside the bathroom. The investigators, while conducting their search around the bathroom where Becky's body was found, stumbled upon her cell phone. Upon examination of Becky's phone, they discovered that she had dialed 91126 at 1:11 a.m. This discovery led the investigators to form a theory about what had happened that night. They believed that as the suspect was chasing her through the house, she desperately tried to call for help, but mistakenly dialed the wrong number before Becky had a chance to try to call 911 again. The investigators thought the suspect knocked the phone out of her hand because the misdialed call occurred at 1:11 a.m. Investigators believed that Becky was likely killed around that time. However, when officers canvassed Becky's neighborhood, no one recalled hearing any noises around that time. The lack of witnesses raised suspicions among the investigators as Becky had suffered multiple gunshot wounds, making it unlikely for someone not to have heard something. As investigators conducted a thorough search of Becky's house, it quickly became apparent that her murder was not the result of a botched burglary, since nothing was missing despite the absence of any stolen items. The perpetrator left a significant amount of evidence behind. One notable discovery was a partial shoe print discovered near the spot where the suspect entered the premises. The shoe print could help identify the make and model of the footwear worn by the suspect and provide details about the size and shape of their feet. Furthermore, the investigators stumbled upon 8 9mm shell casings at the scene. Additionally, the investigators noticed small pieces of shredded plastic scattered across the floor near Becky's body. With all these pieces of evidence collected, the investigators were uncertain what to make of their findings. Therefore, they decided to send the CED evidence to forensic laboratories for analysis. Detectives wanted to find out if any of Becky's neighbors had security cameras outside their homes. One neighbor in particular had installed a camera on the side of their house after their car had been broken into 1 year earlier. This camera was directed towards the neighbor's driveway, which shared a boundary with Becky's home. The camera's function was to turn on and alert the neighbors whenever movement was detected. Unfortunately, on the night of Becky's death, the camera was unable to record anything significant. However, further investigation revealed that the camera had captured something unusual the previous day at 1:05 a.m. The day before Becky was killed, the camera captured a person walking down the driveway toward the back of Becky's house. Approximately 48 minutes later, the same individual was observed walking in the opposite direction. Becky's neighbors' camera had also recorded a similar incident about a week earlier on February 14th. After Becky's neighbors noticed a dark-clad figure lurking around her house on their security camera footage on Valentine's Day, they wasted no time in informing her. The neighbors said she became paranoid once they informed Becky about the mysterious figure. Although Becky told her neighbors she didn't see anyone on her property, she heard voices in her backyard the night before, which scared her. Because of the security camera footage from Becky's neighbor, officers searched the rest of the neighborhood to find more footage showing this dark-clad, mysterious person. Officers found videos from a house in the Quinney bus barn, and that footage showed a person on a bike dressed in dark clothing riding toward Becky's house. These videos showed a person riding a bike dressed in dark clothing, consistent with the description of the mysterious person seen in the driveway footage. After detectives had analyzed the recorded times of the videos, they began to suspect that the person seen on the bike was the same person seen in the footage from Becky's driveway. Although Becky's neighbor's security camera did not capture any footage of the mysterious person on the night of her murder, officers stumbled upon footage of a person on a bike riding in the direction of Becky's house right before and after the incident. The person in this footage matched the description of the person seen lurking in Becky's driveway in the days prior to her murder. Even though the video evidence proved to be helpful in the investigation into Becky's murder, it did not provide a significant amount of information. Due to the poor quality of the footage, the detectives were unable to identify the person depicted in the video, as the image was grainy and made it difficult to determine if this person was male or female. However, one noticeable aspect of the video that stood out to the detectives was the bike the individual was riding. They observed that it did not appear to have reflectors on the wheels when Becky's sister heard that she was murdered. Only one person came to mind as a suspect: Becky's estranged husband, Tim. Becky's sister, who had a first-hand account of the contentious divorce between Becky and Tim, shared this information with the detectives working on her sister's case. With this information, the detectives began to consider Tim as a suspect in Becky's murder. The timing was especially significant, as Becky's murder occurred 1 week before they were supposed to finalize their divorce. As the investigation into Becky's murder continued, investigators made a crucial discovery: a bike lacking reflectors on its wheels, which matched the one seen on the security camera footage, only a block away from Tim Nick's house. This discovery intensified the suspicion surrounding Tim, prompting the detectives to obtain a search warrant for his residence. When the police executed the search warrant, Tim was compliant and respectful throughout the search. He willingly stood outside his home accompanied by the officers as investigators looked through his belongings. On March 13, 2023, 2 weeks after Becky was murdered, Tim was arrested and charged with her murder. After Tim was arrested, his mugshot became public, and his appearance shocked Becky's family and friends. What they saw in the mugshot was a far cry from the clean-cut man they once knew. Instead, they saw a disheveled, unkempt person who appeared in poor physical condition. To many, Tim's appearance reflected the effects that the divorce had on him. His once well-maintained appearance had deteriorated with unkempt hair and messy clothing. Friends and family members speculated that the divorce had taken a toll on his physical and mental well-being. However, Tim had a different explanation for his changed appearance. He claimed that he was growing his hair out for charity. According to Tim, he was participating in an awareness campaign to support cancer research. Because of Tim's appearance on Family Feud and his bizarre response about wishing he had not married his wife. When he was arrested for murdering his wife, the clip went viral. Many saw Tim's remark as an eerie foreshadowing of what was to come. They argued that the bizarre response on Family Feud served as an eerie indicator of Tim's true intentions and feelings towards his wife. Some even labeled it as a warning sign that something sinister was brewing within their relationship. The investigators thoroughly examined Tim's phone and discovered he had created a Facebook account under the name John Smith. Through their investigation, the detectives learned that Tim was searching for a bicycle on Facebook and found a blue Schwinn without any reflectors on the wheels. This discovery was intriguing as it matched the description of a bike found abandoned 1 block away from Tim's residence. Despite the strong case against Tim, the detectives encountered a significant challenge when arrested. Tim was held without bond, but he enacted his right to a speedy trial. Under the terms of this right, prosecutors were required to bring the matter to trial within 90 days of Tim's arrest. The prosecution faced a significant challenge in convincing a jury beyond a reasonable doubt that Tim murdered Becky due to the absence of a confession or DNA evidence. Juries typically look for these 2 key elements in criminal cases. In this case, the state lacked both. In order to successfully prosecute Tim for his wife's murder, the prosecution had a daunting task ahead. Exactly 3 months after Becky Bleck's tragic murder in her home, Tim BNCA stood trial on May 23, 2023. During Tim's trial, the state presented evidence to the prosecution that investigators had recovered at the crime scene. One of the pieces of evidence discussed was the shredded pieces of plastic found on the floor around Becky's body. The prosecution claimed that the shredded plastic pieces were pieces of an Al's grocery bag. The prosecution further presented evidence to the jury that stacks of these bags were later found during a search of Tim's house. According to the prosecutor, Tim used the plastic bags to act as a silencer as he shot his estranged wife several times. They argued that Tim utilized the bags to muffle the sound of the gunfire and prevent it from being heard by others. The prosecution alleged that Tim left DNA while using these Aldi bags. They called an expert to the stand, who testified that Tim was more than likely the DNA contributor. This expert also testified that Tim's DNA could not be excluded from DNA found under Becky's fingernails. The prosecutors presented evidence to the jury, indicating that a crowbar found in Tim's basement may have been used to pry open in the window at the victim's house on the night she was murdered. However, an expert testified that although there were microscopic consistencies between the pry mark and the crowbar, she could not say that the crowbar found in Tim's basement was used to strengthen their case. The prosecution presented several searches that Tim had made on his phone, including 1. How to open my door with a crowbar, 2. How to make a homemade pistol silencer, 3. How to clean gunpowder off your hands, 4. Average police response time in Quinny. The prosecution called an expert to the witness stand who testified that she compared the shell casings found at the crime scene to shell casings investigators found when they searched Tim's house, and determined that 27 of those casings from Tim's home had been fired from the same 9mm weapon used to murder Becky. However, when investigators searched Tim's house, they never found Becky's 9mm gun, which he had refused to turn over to her. Tim later stated that he had not seen that weapon in months before Becky was murdered. When the defense had the opportunity to call witnesses, they opted not to do so. After the 6-day trial ended, the jury deliberated her 4 hours before returning a guilty verdict. As a result, Tim was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Even though Tim claims innocence and says he plans to appeal his conviction, Becky's family believes that he is exactly where he should be during Tim's sentencing hearing. Becky's family had the opportunity to read impact statements. One of Becky's sisters took this opportunity to make Tim aware of the consequences of his actions on the well-being of his sons. She emphasized the point that the choices he had made were causing his sons to suffer, despite Becky's passing her. Sister vowed to keep her alive in the hearts of her 3 sons.